News 4 investigation involving a family seeking answers over a father's death inside the city's Justice Center.
We have exclusive video and records the city does not want you to see. Here's News 4 investigator Susan Alcori.
Love you, baby.
Courtney McNeil makes one more phone call to his family.
Tell my babies I love them. I'm sorry.
While he sits inside the St. Louis City Justice Center.
I should be getting out of here today, man.
On September 6, 2022, McNeil walks into a holding cell. 3 minutes later, he's dragged out, limp and barely moving. Within an hour, the 41-year-old dad passed away. But it's this surveillance video that hasn't been seen until now, along with what it doesn't show, those minutes inside the cell, that's leaving McNeil's loved ones with a lot of questions.
I want justice for my girls, and I want justice for Court.
The mother of McNeil's 11-year-old twin daughters asked us to hide her face. She's afraid of backlash.
That's murder. That's what that is. That's cold-blooded murder.
For months, the City Justice Center's explanation of what happened to McNeil was simply found unresponsive.
I know they did that. I want them to be held accountable for their actions.
The video, along with these records released by the City Justice Center, haven't been seen publicly until now. From the week McNeil died until today, we spent months asking the city to give us this information. Instead, we have a paper trail showing month after month the Justice Center kept delaying releasing anything. And the records that we did get, they aren't complete. There are entire pages the city doesn't want you to see. We keep asking for that information to be released.
Do you think these records should be released sooner to families?
Sure, absolutely.
Bill Meehan is the family's lawyer. He's helping them try to get answers.
These are public records. However, institutions claim privilege all the time, and that's the battle that lawyers have to take.
We know McNeil was arrested on a warrant for missing a court hearing. He's accused of stealing more than 25 grand from an ATM and being found with drugs. He went to the City Justice Center on a Thursday. By Tuesday, 5 days later, McNeil was dead. While the City Justice Center claims McNeil was found this way, the records we uncovered provide another angle. It's clear McNeil wasn't alone in the cell. He was with at least 2 other detainees, a nurse, and 2 guards. Before he died, McNeil had a routine medical check because he was in a detox unit. He goes back to his cell and a few minutes later leaves with a guard. We obtained this incident report from one of the corrections officers. He claims he told a nurse that McNeil was throwing up and in a steady decline. According to the report, the nurse said there was nothing they could do until a wheelchair comes. You can see the wheelchair show up, but McNeil isn't in the cell. The officer doesn't mention that in his report. He claims the wheelchair arrived, he and the nurse enter the cell, and McNeil crawls to the wheelchair, then stops. In the video, the officer and nurse are already inside when we see McNeil walk into the cell. That's the last time he's seen alert. In the corrections officer's report, he claims he and another officer helped McNeil into the wheelchair. Then McNeil let out one breath and seemed to have stopped breathing. None of the video released by the City Justice Center shows those minutes inside the cell. What you see next is this.
There was no bringing it back.
We got our hands on the medical examiner's report. It notes nurses started treating McNeil for an overdose and gave him 3 to 4 doses of Narcan, a potentially life-saving drug. It takes 15 minutes for EMTs to get there, despite the closest fire station being directly across the street. They take McNeil to the hospital where he's pronounced dead. Based on the medical examiner's report, McNeil had drugs in his system, but he didn't die of an overdose. It found his manner of death natural and the cause, complications of a perforated gastric ulcer.
Basically, he had a number of ulcers in his stomach. One of them was deep enough that it eroded through an artery.
Dr. Michael Graham is the chief medical examiner for St. Louis. He explains with ulcers like this, most people have symptoms and get help.
So you could have someone who's walking, talking, and then all of a sudden unresponsive?
It's more likely that he'd be walking and talking and then either got dizzy or passed out. They can go very rapidly from being basically okay to being in serious medical trouble.
McNeil's family and their lawyer, Bill Meehan, have their doubts.
I do not believe that Mr. McNeil died of natural circumstance.
He questions another part of the report that says McNeil had blunt force injuries to his torso and lower extremity.
I believe that he died of complications from a physical beating, and I think that's supported by the ME's report.
Meehan claims they talked to a detainee who was a witness.
He's indicated that he thinks that he saw Mr. McNeil being beaten and that he was denied medical attention.
The medical examiner has another explanation.
The ones in the chest are fairly typical of resuscitation injuries, and then the ones in the knees probably when he collapsed.
Despite phone calls and emails, Commissioner of Corrections Jennifer Clemens Abdullah won't talk to News 4 Investigates.
I have no confidence in the management of the Justice Center because I don't believe that it's properly maintained.
McNeil is one of 6 people who died in custody at the Justice Center last year. The city released little to no information about their deaths. On top of that, we uncovered the city isn't following reporting requirements. In Missouri, when someone dies in custody, the center is supposed to send this form to the State Department of Public Safety, which in turn sends that information to the Federal Department of Justice. News 4 Investigates found the City Justice Center only reported 2 of the 6 deaths. One of the 2 was McNeil. His report barely has any details and uses the same explanation of found unresponsive. What's more, the report is wrong. It says McNeil died on September 4th. He died on September 6th.
Somebody down there is not doing their job.
McNeil's family wants more than answers.
With all these deaths that have been happening in the last year, they all need to be held responsible for their actions. It's not right. Jail is not a death sentence.
Everything we're talking about here is dealing with public records. These are things you should be able to see. They're an important part of transparency and a way to ensure accountability. It took us months to get limited information, and the family here tells us it shouldn't be so hard to find out what happened to their loved one. One of the big questions that remains is why aren't there records of the City Justice Center reporting every in-custody death to the state? We're continuing to ask the city and state why and try to get to the bottom of that. Susan Elcory, News 4 Investigates.
Another